I'm not sure what music is good for successful student loan repayment strategies, waiting room, but
That's a good question. I don't think anyone's made a song about student loans yet that I know
no,
of.
no one wants to sing about that.
Too specific.
Uh-huh. Hi, everyone. We'll just continue to let people join, but thank you for being here.
There's lots of songs about money. That's an easy topic, but
Mhm.
yeah, look up student loan songs. There's like four, maybe. I
Okay, so probably not very good material out there.
would think.
All right. Okay, it is noon. So I think we'll get started and people can continue to join. But we have a lot to cover today. I'll just get started. So welcome everyone to our Successful Student Loan Repayment Strategies workshop today. There's a lot of information to cover. I really appreciate you all joining. And also, we are recording, so if there's anything you miss or anything you need a little bit more information on, because there is a lot of information, then please feel free to catch the recording. It'll be in the platform and you can listen to it as many times as you need. So with that said, let's get right into it. So firstly, I am your host for today's workshop. My name is Kimberly Essie. I'm a financial coach and accredited financial counselor at Questus. I am here to answer any questions that come up in the workshop today. I can also answer questions in a private coaching session, so feel free to do either of those things that resonate with you. And yeah, we'll just get into the agenda. So today's agenda is pretty robust. It doesn't look like a whole lot here, but within each of these categories, there's a lot of info. So we're going to talk about federal student loan repayment status, so where you're at in the process, restarting payment after the pause, or it's your first time going into repayment. We're going to talk about strategies for repayment throughout. That is the purpose of the workshop, but there's going to be several times we'll cover different strategies depending on your situation. We're going to talk about consolidation versus refinancing, deferment versus forbearance, student loan forgiveness, different programs that exist for that. And we'll also have a Q&A and discussion at the end for any questions you may have. One thing I want to mention too before we move through our workshop is that the content is pretty specific to federal student loan repayment. That said, we are going to cover a little bit about private loans, but if you are in a situation where you have private student loans and you're not seeing answers to questions you have in this workshop, that would be a really great topic for a coaching session. So please feel free to book a coaching session to discuss private student loans. But again, we will cover some of that today. Okay, so federal student loan interest and payments. We resumed payment from the pause last fall, as many of you know. So in March 2020, there was a student loan payment pause, and this pause also stopped interest from accruing. It was 0% interest during that pause, which was fabulous. That ended last September 30th. Payments resumed in October of 2023. The pause included the following relief measures of eligible loans. It was suspension of loan payments, as I mentioned, 0% interest, and any collections that had started on defaulted loans were stopped and your loan went into forbearance. So that was a benefit of that pause. It lasted about 3 years, a little bit longer. Now, there is currently a temporary 12-month on-ramp period that started last fall of 2023 And we'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides, but that was a 12-month period for coming back from the pause, getting back into paying your loans. So your loans continue to be in a forbearance status, and that is going to end September 30th of 2024. We'll talk a little bit more about that in coming slides if you need more information on that. Okay, so if you have restarted payment already, so you've got your billing statement last year, you started making your payments according to whatever the plan was with your new servicer or your old servicer, then you already know a lot of this information, that you may qualify for income-driven repayment or forgiveness. We'll talk about both of those options shortly. You may have qualified or do qualify for a collections pause under the Fresh Start program. We'll talk a little bit about that too. And your loan servicer may have changed. You may know this already, or if you haven't restarted payment yet, you may not know that. So if you're still not sure who your servicer is, log into studentaid.gov. One thing, if you've restarted your payments, that is always a good thing to do. I say that because I'm a financial coach, of course, but updating your spending plan, that's your budget. We call them spending plans, and really great idea to take a look at your spending plan, take a look and see if the payments that you've been making make sense for your spending plan, or if there's some other plan that might be a better fit for you. We are going to talk about those shortly. Okay, so we're going to move into those who are entering repayment for the first time. This is people who weren't part of the pause. This is new loans that are coming due. You're out of the deferment period and you're getting ready to pay. So a couple things to consider for you. Make sure that your contact information is accurate and updated. If you've moved, you've changed email or phone numbers, you'll want to make sure that's updated in studentaid.gov. If you're with the same servicer that you initially got your loans with, then you'll just want to check that information still looks good. It's possible you're with a new loan servicer already, so you'll just want to log in and get that information. If you are getting ready to make your payments and you're thinking you're going to have to log in and do it, or you're going to have to send money, auto debit enrollment is a really good way to go. There's a huge benefit to this too. If you're new to your student loan payments, you might know this, you might not, but you could get a 0.25 percentage point decrease on your interest rate for making those payments auto debit. So that's a huge initiative for getting that set up that way. If you have enough money in your bank accounts to cover that and you're not concerned about that, auto debit can be the way to go. Set it and forget it. Something we really like as coaches, just to set something up and sort of let it go on autopilot. If you're having concerns with doing that because you feel that your checking account may not have enough money to cover that on a regular basis, a coach can also talk about your spending plan with you to make sure that you're feeling comfortable with that payment and that your bank account's set up to facilitate that, or to potentially address other payment options that you might want to consider and explore with studentaid.gov. Repayment plans, speaking of those, there is a loan simulator that some of you may be familiar with, but if not, there's a loan simulator that's available on studentaid.gov. And the loan simulator allows you to go in and make create different options for repayment based on different factors you would input, and you can compare and contrast those payment options. I'm going to link that shortly. And one of the things coaches can help with is we can help you look at your options and figure out what's best for you, weighing the pros and cons of each approach. So know what your payment's going to be. You're going to receive a billing statement 21 days before your payment is due. But you can also get this online and set up your auto pay option. Know your options for the different plans that you can sign up for. And we'll go over that again very shortly. You can stick to the automatic 10-year payment timeline if that works for you. That is going to be your standard repayment plan. And update your spending plan to adjust for what your payment's going to be. So if this is a new expense that you haven't accounted for in the past, you don't know how much that's going to be, take a look at your budget and figure out how to adjust that to include that new payment. And again, coaches are here to help. Also, you can do this in the Questus platform. You can connect your student loans there, and you can also adjust your spending plan for that category to make sure that you're allowing enough in your spending plan for that expense. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, which talks a little bit more about if you haven't started repayment yet. This is for people who were part of the pause, you haven't started repayment. Don't panic because you're still in forbearance. We talked about this briefly in a few slides prior, but temporary on-ramp period, that is automatically you're qualifying for that. That's going to end September 30th of 2024. So here in about 3 months, but there was no enrollment required for that. So if you didn't start making your payments, you are in forbearance, you're not in default. You won't be in default until after September 30th. So this is a really good time to figure out what you can afford to pay and get into one of these affordable plans if you need to do so. Payments are still due during this forbearance period. Forbearance just means that you're not going to be in default with your loans, but you're still accruing interest. So that's what's happening now if you haven't started repayment. Your payments are not being, missed payments are not being reported to any credit agencies or rating agencies. And even though your balance is increasing, your monthly payment may go up, you're not going to be in default. So the only loans that are eligible for this that I'm referring to would have been COVID-19 payment pause loans. So there's really nothing you need to do. But again, as we get closer to that September 30th date, we'll want to figure out what your payment options are so we can get you a plan that works for your budget. And no matter what, you want to make sure that you log into studentaid.gov. That is the first thing you should do because it's going to have all of your information, where your servicers are if you have multiple loans, who they are, what their contact info is, what your payment's going to be, and it's going to have applications for different programs you can sign up for that we're going to go over in detail. So one thing to note here, I have the link up. I don't have the link in the chat, but it's just studentaid.gov. And what you'll want to do is log in there if you have a direct loan or a federal loan, but Parent Plus loans, those are a different login. I actually was trying to find it before our workshop, and I was struggling with finding the login details. But what I would recommend is go to studentaid.gov and search Parent Plus loans. There's several pages that will show up and you'll find the login in one of those. I know it was in one of those. I just there was a lot of pages. One thing about studentaid.gov you've probably learned is that there is a lot of information and a lot of different sites within the site. So it can feel really overwhelming. So again, with this Parent Plus loans, that's a different login. Okay. So I think we're ready to go. Yes, perfect. So let's start talking about the Fresh Start program. This is defaulted student loan relief. This was something that was implemented in April of 2022. So it's been around for a while. The Fresh Start program is going to encompass federal student loans. And if you've defaulted already, if you've been in default before, this is a really good option for getting out of default. And in fact, before you can even consider any income-driven repayment plans or the SAVE program or for loan forgiveness, you have to be out of default. So the Fresh Start program is a way for you to do that. I highly recommend that if you're in this situation that you look into the Fresh Start program. I'm going to also link in the chat so everyone has access to the link, as well as the phone number if you prefer to call. But yeah, I will do that shortly. So let me tell you a little bit about the program. I'm going to have to send the link in a moment, but this is the number for Fresh Start. And they're probably quite busy, but that's one way to get a hold of them. I will link it shortly. So the Fresh Start program is going to get you out of default so then you can have conversations about income-driven repayment. The loans return to current status on credit reports. So negative default marks are removed. That's a huge benefit of the Fresh Start program. So if your credit score has been damaged because of default, this is going to remedy that. It's going to also give you continued access to federal student aid and other government loans like government-backed mortgages, which you wouldn't have access to in default. So that is actually something that is currently available to you, even if you're in default without having signed up for Fresh Start. That is a benefit that exists right now. As of September 30th of 2024, that's going to go away. But the other benefits of Fresh Start, you have to enroll in. You have to enroll for in order to get. So that would be the current status on credit reports, access to flexible repayment plans we'll go over. And if you get out of default through the Fresh Start program, you may qualify for a $0 payment if your income is low and you're applying for the SAVE program. But again, the SAVE program is only accessible if you're in default through the Fresh Start program. So it can also give you access to short-term relief like deferment or forbearance, which we will talk about. And it will suspend debt collection efforts. So if you're getting calls from debt collectors, if you're getting calls from your servicers, then this is going to go away through the Fresh Start program. Again, it's because you're getting out of default and into being current. So that's the phone number. I said I was going to link the Fresh Start program. So let me do that before we move on. So bear with me. This is actually not the correct link. I'm going to link this. It gives you some information, but it is not the link directly to the federal website, but it will give you information on the Fresh Start program to do a little more research. And the link to get there is in this link here. So go ahead and check this out if you're interested. One other thing to note about the Fresh Start program as well is that in order to apply for it, you do need to log into studentaid.gov. So no matter what research you do, you'll need to log in order to apply for Fresh Start, or you can call that phone number on the screen that I put in the chat. Okay, let's go to the next point relating to servicers. So if you're not sure who your servicer is or you don't know their contact information, here is that slide. Please take a screenshot if that's helpful. This is phone numbers that I verified yesterday. So these are the accurate contact information for these servicers. You'll see on the right-hand side here that those are your loan servicers, and then the default servicers are below that. So if your loan's in default, your servicer is going to be one of those. So again, log into your studentaid.gov account and you can determine who your servicer is, and these are the contacts for that. One thing to note when you're calling a servicer for any reason is that they may not always give you loan repayment plans that are best for you. So talk to them, get information about what a plan would look like for you. The simulator is simply an estimate of what your situation would be, what your payments would look like. In order to get the actual information, you'll have to contact your servicer, and you can get that information, but then talk to a coach, talk to me or any of the Questus coaches about which is actually the best one for you. The loan servicers aren't really going to give you that advice. They're just going to give you the numbers. So take those numbers and talk to a coach. That would be my best advice for that. So let's talk a little bit about repayment plans. Okay, so we have several different plans here. Some of them you might have heard of. If you haven't, we'll just go over these. Standard payment, that's going to be whatever is your fixed payment for 10 years. that if you do nothing, you're going to get a bill for. And that is often fine for people, but not always. And especially as our incomes change, or maybe we're in a situation where we're not employed yet, and so that's just not going to work for us. A graduated payment is an initially low payment that increases every 2 years. So the standard here is still going to be that 10-year loan repayment. For consolidated loans, it could be 10 to 30 years. So it actually is quite longer potentially. But graduated repayment doesn't have to necessarily be the standard 10 years. It can be longer. So that is an option. This would be a good for you potentially if you're expecting that your income will increase over time and that you're not necessarily ready to pay the even number of payments of the standard plan right out the gate. The extended plan is going to be longer payment terms. So this is going to be not 10-year repayment, but 12 to 25 years with interest increases. So this is going to give you lower payments now and going forward, but you're going to extend the life of the loan. And then income-driven plans. So these are often, well, they're all income-based, of course. Income-driven plans are going to each assess a different type of income repayment based on what your disposable income is. So firstly, we'll talk about income-based repayment. So income-based payments are going to be based on your income, not the amount that you owe, and lower payment than the other options. So that could be a good option if you're feeling like you're not making enough to cover that standard or any of the other payments we've discussed. And there are ways to calculate these. The simulator is going to be able to give you a pretty good estimate. An income contingent repayment is going to look at discretionary income as the difference between your annual income and 100% of the poverty guideline for your family and size and state of residence. So an income contingent repayment is going to look different each year because the poverty guidelines are changed each year. So this is something that could be a really good option for you because it's looking definitely at your discretionary income compared to the poverty guideline. Income sensitive repayment is also looking at borrowers who are in lower income jobs. You're maybe just not making a whole lot of money, and it's going to adjust your monthly payments based on a fixed percentage of your gross monthly income. And it's typically going to be based between 4 and 25% of that. So again, the calculations get a little complicated and kind of granular. We don't need to go into so much detail on this call for that, but I want you to have an idea of what the numbers are they're looking at. They can be calculated using the simulator as well. So that's one way to get an idea of what these different plans will look like, because as I'm discussing it, it's probably hard to envision what the differences are. So if you go into that simulator, it'll give you an idea, and then you can take that to a financial coach and they can kind of help you weigh the pros and cons there. Keeping in mind that the simulator is just simulating your situation and that your actual payments will probably vary, but it'll give you a pretty good idea of where you'll be. And then lastly is pay as you earn. So the pay as you earn program is you're eligible if you're a new borrower of a loan after October 1st of 2011 and did not owe on loans as of October 1st, 2007. So very specific timeframes there. But the pay as you earn program or pay plan is only if your loan is from after October 1st, 2011, and you didn't owe on any other loans, federal loans, as of October 1st, 2007. It's only for direct loans, and the repayment amount is 10% of the difference between your adjusted gross income, which is on your tax return, AGI, and 150% of the poverty guideline. So it's a higher percentage. So this can be a really, really good option if you qualify. One thing to note here is that with this program, forgiveness will be treated as taxable income. So you'll want to just note that with the pay program. And I also want to just say that in general, all federal student loans are eligible for forgiveness after 25 years. That's for a graduate loan. It's 20-year term for an undergraduate loan, except for loans in default. So that is why the Fresh Start program is so important if you are in default, because you're not going to be eligible for that forgiveness in those terms unless you are out of default. And there is forgiveness at 10 years for certain public service jobs. We're going to talk about loan forgiveness a little bit toward the end of our presentation. But the remaining debt and interest is forgiven after 25 years in repayment, but treated as taxable income that year. For grad loans, it's 20 for undergrad, depending on the terms of your loan. But keep in mind that that's going to be treated as taxable income. One thing to note is any forgiveness that would occur before 2026 would be tax-free, but that's expiring after 2026. So if that applies to you, that's great news. But if not, it could be extended. We don't really know what's going to happen there. In fact, a lot of the student loan forgiveness has been so up in the air the last couple of years. So it's just something to keep in mind. But laws can change. One thing I also want to mention about the IDR repayment plans, those are the income-driven repayment plans, is that sometimes this is an issue that people have encountered, is that the monthly payment doesn't necessarily cover all the interest that accumulates in a month. And so loan balances can grow even when paid on time and in full. And we hear this a lot. This happens to a lot of people with these income-driven repayment plans. With the SAVE plan, which is Saving on a Valuable Education Plan, this is going to be based on no more than 10% of your discretionary income. That's the one we were talking about. What's nice about this particular plan is that it eliminates interest not covered by the monthly payment. So your loan balance wouldn't be going down if just paying the interest charge, but it won't be growing. So this is a benefit of the SAVE plan that isn't part of the income-driven plan. And the SAVE plan is new. So if you've looked into income-driven repayment before and felt like you're either in it and you're feeling like your balance is growing or it hasn't really been a good fit for you, look into the SAVE plan. If you log into studentaid.gov, you can take a look at the SAVE plan there and you can apply there. You can also do the SAVE plan in the simulator. So again, I really encourage you to take a look at those different options and talk to a financial coach about what those look like for your situation. Okay, if you need other options, the next slide is just a transition to talk about a couple other options that may apply to you that we can talk about today. So consolidation versus refinancing. Let's talk about these because they're very different and very important to know the differences. So consolidating student loans and refinancing can both be good options. Consolidating means combining your multiple federal student loans into a single loan. And this can be really good for keeping track of your loans. It can be hard to remember, especially if you have different servicers, it can be hard to track your multiple loans. They have different interest rates. So consolidating your federal student loans can be very helpful in that way. Then you're just making that one payment. It can simplify that repayment for you. And it doesn't, so consolidating is helpful in that way. However, it does not lower the interest rate on your current loans. It simply takes the weighted average of the interest rates on those loans and rounds up to the nearest 1/8%. So there's really not a benefit from an interest rate perspective. It's simply more for just ease. And also it can just make your life a lot simpler to have the one payment. You can consolidate too as part of the Fresh Start and then, some of the other payment options. So once you're back, let's say you're in default on any of your loans, use the Fresh Start program, get current, and then you can look into consolidation. Refinancing, on the other hand, involves taking out a new loan with a private lender to pay off one or more of your existing loans, including federal and private. So refinancing here means that you are getting a new loan altogether, and that loan is paying off your former loans. So this is just you have a new loan now, and it would be with a private lender rather than a student loan or with the government. So the new loan will have different terms. It'll be whatever your contract says. It could have a lower interest rate. It could have a longer or shorter repayment term. The monthly payment will probably be different because of those things. That's why you're thinking about refinancing in the first place. But refinancing federal student loans means that you're going to lose access to federal loan benefits such as income-driven repayment, loan forgiveness, forbearance, and deferment options because you don't have the federal student loans anymore. They're now in a private loan. So it can have huge ramifications for you in that sense. And so having a conversation with a financial coach about the pros and cons of that is really helpful because obviously a private lender is going to want you to do it. And if you want an unbiased perspective, then a financial coach is a good idea here because we really can help you weigh those pros and cons and take a look at what those payment terms are going to look like for you and understand the difference between that and what you're paying now. But it can be a good option, and either of these can be good. It's just good to know what your options are before having those conversations with lenders. One thing I also want to mention about consolidation here is that spouses can no longer consolidate their federal loans together. They used to be able to, but since 2006, that's no longer an option. And if this applies to you, meaning that you have consolidated your loans with a spouse, the government is allowing the uncoupling of partner and spouse consolidation. So you can get the benefit of forgiveness if you qualify, but your spouse doesn't, for example. This is also relevant for divorce if you've divorced from your spouse, but you still have consolidated loans. So this is something that was passed in 2022. And actually, since it's been passed, there's still not really an application that exists. So what you want to do at this point, if this is something that applies to you or you're interested in, is to contact your federal student aid ombudsman group to indicate that you intend to apply for separation of joint consolidation loans. And then when the application is available, then you would be able to be notified of being able to fill that out. So kind of a mess a little bit there. It's been a couple years since that passed, and we're still waiting on the information. But I wanted to mention that in case that's relevant to anyone. And I'm going to link in the chat a little bit more about that from the studentaid.gov website, so you can do a little bit more research if that applies to you. Okay. So next we're going to talk about deferment versus forbearance. And that will be the next slide. Perfect. So deferment and forbearance, we've talked about forbearance a little bit. I mentioned that currently loans are in forbearance status if they were part of the COVID-19 pause. But let's talk a little bit about the differences between these two. So deferment and forbearance are both options for borrowers of federal student loans. Deferment is a temporary suspension of loan payments, but there's no interest accrual in deferment. That is the primary difference between the two. It does not accrue on subsidized loans that would qualify for deferment. And to be eligible, you have to meet certain criteria, and you can talk to your servicer about what that looks like. But often it means being enrolled in school at least half time, serving in the military, or if you're experiencing unemployment or economic hardship as defined by the loan servicer. So applying for deferment needs to be done through the servicer directly. So you'll want to contact your loan servicer to get information on what's required to sign up for deferment. They will want documentation to support your request, but deferment is definitely the preferable option because it doesn't have the interest accrual while in deferment. Forbearance, on the other hand, it does have interest accrual, even though you're not paying. There's a pause, even though you're not paying the loan. But yes, you're still accruing interest. So this one can be a tough one because even though forbearance means you're not going into default, you're still not. It's not great because you're still kind of accruing that interest while also not paying. So forbearance isn't something you'll want to do a lot, but definitely do it if you don't qualify for deferment, but they say you could qualify for forbearance. It's a temporary suspension of your loan payments, and it can be granted for reasons like financial hardship, illness, certain unforeseen circumstances. It's again, if you don't qualify for deferment, you may still qualify for forbearance. So look into both with your servicer. And I think that, oh, and it's not automatic. So even though we're currently in an automatic forbearance because of that ramp up program I mentioned, that is not a standard thing. And that isn't to be expected in the future. So you do have to apply for these things. All right. The next slide is really for taking a screenshot. I really like this slide, even though it's kind of hard to see, honestly. But if you take a screenshot and zoom in, I think this is a really useful visual for some of the confusion we're feeling when we're trying to navigate studentaid.gov or student loan payment options. And if you're confused or you're not sure where to go, I like this visual. I also, again, I always say talk to a financial coach because we can help guide you. I often get coaching clients who are coming to me for one reason, like something else, but it always ends up being that, oh, and I've got the student loans. And it's not something people, they're like, I don't need to worry about it because I'm not paying until September 30th or October 1st. They're in forbearance. And I agree that that is maybe not necessarily the highest priority for you in that moment. You're coming to me for some other reason, but ultimately that forbearance is ending, and we have time to have these conversations with you. We have 3 months, we have more than 3 months to have these conversations. So if that's you and you've just been kind of overwhelmed with even having the conversations or knowing where to start, or studentaid.gov is super confusing, please just talk to a coach because we can at least give you a step by step of, okay, here's what you'll want to do first, here's what you want to do second for your situation. All this information is general, but every single person's situation is different. So we really encourage you to have those conversations with us. It is a free benefit you have. So we encourage you to do that if you're feeling a little lost or confused. Okay, so let's move on to forgiveness. We talked about a couple forgiveness options earlier in the workshop. So I'm going to first touch on public service loan forgiveness, but I just realized that I also want to make sure I'm linking the loan simulator. I told you I would, and there it is. So I've been talking about this a lot. This is the simulator. It'll take you directly to the simulator. Feel free to use this. You can also use this in a coaching session, so we can pull it up and look at it in real time. Okay, so public service loan forgiveness program. So as far as this program goes, it forgives your federal student debt after 10 years of payments. This is going to be 120 payments while employed full-time in a qualifying nonprofit or public service job. So you may already know about this if this is you, but you may also not know about it, and it might also qualify. You may qualify for it and you didn't even intend to. So this is something that if you aren't aware of, you can submit an application for this. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. And I can also link you to that at the studentaid.gov site. Now, I wanted to mention here that it does, so your federal family education loans do not qualify for this program. They have to be direct loan program, direct loans only, but you can consolidate into direct loans and then be eligible. So that is something to consider. And if that is you, then I definitely encourage a coaching session to talk about what that would look like for you, because that's a consolidation. And so there's, of course, pros and cons to that. So in order to qualify for this program, besides being a nonprofit or public service employee, submit a public service loan forgiveness certification form annually to stay on track once you have applied initially and been accepted, because then you're certifying to them that you're still in that job, you're still able to benefit from that program. So there's an annual certification. You can also sign up for income-driven repayment plans to lower your monthly payment. The SAVE plan is also, you can qualify for the SAVE plan. You might have a $0 payment. So once you're in this program, it doesn't unqualify you for other types of payment plans. It really is, it's just making it so that you have a 10-year trajectory of having your loans forgiven, which is huge. So direct loan program only, as I mentioned. You can also apply for forgiveness of remaining balance after you qualify. So maybe you didn't know about this and you qualified and now you're applying. That's going to apply for your remaining balance. There is also something called the Temporary Expanded Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which if some or all of your payments weren't made on a qualifying repayment plan for this, that you might be able to receive loan forgiveness under a temporary opportunity. So I'm going to link that as well. But first, it's a lot of information and I'm trying to get through it in a reasonable time. So if I'm saying anything and you have questions on it, please ask in the chat. If I don't know the answer specific to you, then I will get information to you. I will take your email and make sure I get that information. So I just linked the public service loan forgiveness link. I'm also going to link the temporary, that is the same link, the temporary expanded public service loan for if you qualified but didn't know it and you've already paid toward your loans. This is a temporary program, so I encourage you to look into that as soon as possible. And I think that I've covered everything on this that I wanted to. But if you have any questions on this, please let me know. Okay, let's move on to teacher loan forgiveness program. Wonderful. So this is going to qualify. There can be some overlap between the public service loan forgiveness and the teacher loan forgiveness. So you may qualify for both and you'll just have to figure out what is best for you. So in order to qualify for this, you have to have a zero balance on a direct loan or federal family education loan program as of 10/1/1998. So if you had a zero balance on any of those as of 1998 or didn't have one in the first place, then you would qualify. You must be full-time employed as a highly qualified teacher for 5 complete consecutive academic years, with at least one of those being after the 1997 and 98 academic year. To qualify as a highly qualified teacher, you must have attained at least a bachelor's degree, received a full state certification as a teacher, not have had certification or licensure requirements waived on an emergency, temporary, or provisional basis, and have that full-time employment requirement that I mentioned. And here is the link to studentaid.gov for this particular program, the teacher loan forgiveness program. And then the loan must have been made before the end of your 5 academic years of qualifying service. It must not be in default. Again, fresh start program if you're in default. You must be in an active repayment, and you must not have received the public service loan forgiveness for the same period. So this is, again, is that you can't qualify for both for the same period. So no double dipping there. You can't receive credit toward this program and PSLF for the same period, but if you apply for and receive teacher loan forgiveness, the 5-year period of service that supported your eligibility will not count toward the PSLF. So you'll want to consider whether you're interested in the PSLF before deciding to pursue the teacher loan forgiveness. This is another of those weighing the pros and cons of each approach. You can talk to a coach about this. I also urge you to look at the links I sent and look at what qualifies you. But if you're qualifying for both, then we can have a conversation, or a coach can have a conversation with you about that, and kind of direct you to some next steps to take. And then I want to mention eligibility as well. So PLUS loans for parents and graduate or professional students are not eligible for teacher loan forgiveness program. Federal Perkins loans are also not eligible, but the Perkins loan program has a cancellation option for teachers. So I'm going to link that here if that is something that you think is relevant to you. And you may be eligible to have all or a portion of your federal Perkins loans canceled or discharged under certain conditions. I have another link for that. I'm just sending tons of links to you. Oh, wait, it's the same link. We're good. So all of the information you need for that will be at the forgiveness/cancellation/Perkins, if you think that is relevant to you. Okay, lots of information. Thank you for bearing with me, everyone. So we're getting to the end of our workshop today. So we're going to talk a little bit about creative strategies we haven't already discussed. So 1/4 to 1/3 of borrowers are late on the very first payment on their student loans. And most student loans have a 6-month grace period. So it's easy to lose track of repayment amongst all of the other bills that we have in life. And so getting ahead of that and knowing when your payment is due and what your payment's going to be is really important in making sure you're staying on track with when your payment is going to come due. Auto payment and auto debit is really helpful there. So just make sure that if you think you have a payment due soon, or you haven't started repayment yet, that you just are getting on top of that to kind of have that knowledge. Once you have that knowledge, then you can make a plan on how you're going to attack that. So that's my first tip. My second is to make sure you're comfortable with the payment and know what to do if you're not. So if you're looking at your payment and saying, I think this is doable, in fact, I think I can pay this and save for my other goals, I'm happy with this payment plan, then that's great. And that's like the ideal situation. But if you're feeling uncomfortable with the payment, it might be that it's too high for your income. It could also be that maybe it's comfortable, but you might have to adjust your spending plan, and people don't really want to do that. I mean, I'm used to having the kind of flexibility with my money to be able to do certain things with it. And if I have this particular payment every month, I'm not going to be so comfortable. So you need to kind of weigh the difference between, is this feasible for my budget? Like, can I make this work if I adjust my spending in other categories? Or is it really, really not possible to make this payment on top of your other expenses? This is a conversation coaches can help with as well, because we can help figure out if, hey, we can totally make this work, or maybe we can't make this work and there might be better options for you. And we'll be honest with you, it can sometimes be painful to cut expenses that we like to spend on, not required expenses. And there's a difference, of course, but yeah, we can definitely help with your spending plan adjustments if needed. Automate if possible. This isn't just for your loans, this is just for all your payments, because the easier you make your life with having to pay your expenses kind of out of sight, out of mind, the easier it's going to be to manage what's left over, and also not have to worry about going in and manually making payments for things. It's just a lot to kind of float around in your brain. Pay higher interest first. This is kind of not so much for student loans alone. It's also for any of your, let's say, debt you have. So maybe you're looking at your student loan and saying, I want to pay more because I want to get it paid off sooner. And that might be a really good strategy for you. But if you have credit card debt that's at a higher interest, or you have a private student loan that's at a higher interest, maybe we would prioritize that, or we would look at all of the debt and say, like, what's going to be the best approach for you, so you're either paying it off faster or you're paying the least amount in interest. And there's different approaches that we can look at in figuring out what that looks like for you. So that's, yeah, and we have some great calculators in the platform too. We have a debt snowball calculator, which I don't have a link to, but if you go into the platform and search debt snowball, it'll show up, and it allows you to put in your different debts with the different interests, the different balances, your monthly payments, and figure out a repayment plan. I really like that option for people who are considering debt consolidation, for example, because sometimes you don't have to actually formally consolidate your debt. You can simply go in and figure out how you can consolidate it yourself by just paying in different strategies, like different strategies for repayment. Talk to a coach. I've said that a lot. I won't say it again, but talk to a coach. And connect your accounts. Connect your accounts in the platform, including your loans, because then you can actually create goals too. So if your goal is to pay off your loans by a certain date, you can see if you're on track for that. And it's really motivating to see the progress. And that's one of the things I like about the goals feature, is when you're linking your accounts and you have your goal, you can actually see where you're at with it, and you can adjust it if you don't like that timeline, or if you need to pay less. Lots of flexibility in there. Okay, so I think that those are all of the slides. So at this point, I can take any questions or any comments that anyone has on any of the content. And while we're waiting for questions, yeah, so here's a couple helpful resources on the platform. You can see here that we have the nice little platform showing up. So resources is where you would click to either look at articles or resources, and we have a ton of them relating to student loan payment. So you can just filter for student loans. You can also search student loans. You can also search debt. If you're looking at like more of a holistic debt repayment for student loans, but also maybe credit cards or car loans, things like that. So yeah, definitely take a look in there. And what else? I don't see any questions coming in. If you haven't logged in before, there is a slide that I'd love to show you that will give you some direction on how to log in. So if we move to the next slide, it's the site is go.myquestis.com. If you've never logged in, you can go to that. And if you're a new user or you don't remember your login information, you can click on that new user to get started, or forgot password. But this is how you log into the platform. And it's really easy. If you're having any concerns or questions on how to do that, and you're having any issues with that, please let us know in the chat, or a Q&A, the Q&A feature. Also, there is a support email that Bryant can probably link if you have any concerns or questions with logging in. I think it's just support@myquestis.co, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. Is that correct, Bryant? We'll give him a sec to confirm.
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. Okay. So,
not able to send it to everyone, but that is the right one. Yep.
okay. No problem. I sent it. And what else? And then, yeah, so that's really all I had today. I'm really appreciative that everyone attended today. I've really appreciated being able to share this information. It's a lot of information, and there's really no way to share it without it feeling a little daunting, and I apologize for that. But if any of the terminology helps at all, now that you know some of the questions to ask, some of the programs that exist, I hope that that's helpful in being able to do some research for yourself on what might be best for you. and to take any questions that you get when you're doing that research to a coach to weigh your options, because it's going to be different for everybody. So yeah, I will be on for the next couple minutes to take any questions that come in. And if there are no questions, then I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope that this was helpful and that we can connect in a session soon. So thank you, everyone.